So, not in an act of cruelty, but as an act of mercy, the Creator wants to remove those things. And so, because every one of us in here, I'm going to assume that you're here because you're a believer. And if you're not, then you need to do something about that. But I'm going to assume you're here because you're a believer. I'm going to assume that you've been born again of that incorruptible seed that Peter talks about. I'm going to assume that because most of you probably aren't Jewish, ethnically speaking. Would I be right? Okay? And yet here you are, sitting in this congregation on Shabbat, wearing your tzitzit, wearing your kapot. We're going to have a donate here in a little bit. There's not going to be any treif there. Not going to be any BLTs. Right? Better not be. Interested, wanting to understand the roots of our faith. Some of us can't even explain why. We just have this compulsion. Want to understand the roots of our faith. Our minds are being renewed. And yet we're all still walking around in a house of flesh. In other words, we're all still dealing with who and what we really are, at least as far as that carnal side goes. And so we've come to a place in time where the Creator, if we have it, we will. We come to a place where the Creator is saying to us as individuals to put the wicked thing out from the midst of you, to get it out. And do you know how most often the wicked that's within us is put without us? It's, if I can use this word metaphorically, lashes. We can read about it in the Torah portion. There are certain things that require lashes. There are certain things that require stoning. There are certain things that require this. All of this correction that seems cruel, that seems cold and harsh to the carnal mind, to the flesh, because the flesh doesn't want to hurt. That's why it seems cold and harsh, because the flesh doesn't want to hurt. And yet, all of these things are intended to do what? To put the evil out from the midst of you. So, I will concede to you, I will admit to you, that as an individual, I've been going through a lot of things in the last 18 months. Different versions, but basically boiling down to the same thing. The Creator is bringing to my attention even some more stuff in me that He wants me to put the evil out from the midst. Because if it is allowed to remain there, if it's allowed to be nursed, if it festers and grows, then guess what's going to happen? Everything is going to be corrupted. All my work will come to nothing if I'm not diligent to guard against these things. If I'm not diligent to respond to what the Creator is speaking to me through circumstances. You know, I grew up Pentecostal. Grew up in the Church of God. Cleveland, Tennessee, Church of God. And, you know, typically, and I'm not putting that down, frankly. I'm not castigating that. I'm just explaining where I come from. When things would happen that were considered to be bad, the typical Pentecostal response was to stand up, start speaking in tongues, and rebuking the devil. Right? But you know what I found? Many, if not most of the times, it wasn't the devil at all.
Amen.
It was the Creator either allowing the stupid, unwise decisions that I had made to run their course, or He allowed certain things to happen, or He even in some cases perhaps orchestrated events. But nevertheless, in the end, what I found, it wasn't the devil that I was up against. It was His will that I was up against. My will and His will was coming into conflict with one another. But knowing that reassures me of this, that His intentions are not to destroy. You see, the thief comes but to steal, kill, and destroy. But the Father's purpose is never to destroy. He chastens those He loves. Why? Because He wants to restore them. He wants His sons and His daughters to overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and not love their lives even unto death.
That's right.
That's what He wants. And so as a loving, merciful Father, He will allow certain things to happen, lashes, if you will. He will allow those things to happen, but again, it is not intended to destroy, it is intended to restore. He does it not because He's being cruel and harsh and unloving and uncaring. Quite to the contrary. He's doing it or allowing it because He is loving, that He is merciful. He's long-suffering, not willing that any should perish. Sometimes I believe it's, and I say this for myself, it's hard for the flesh to comprehend that. Because when you're going through things, when you're going through trials, when you're going through tribulations, that's really all you're focused on. It's hard to think with a spiritual mind when you're going through these kinds of things. And yet, somehow or another, folks, we have to, number one, ask and seek help from Him.
Yes.
And we must actually discipline ourselves and train ourselves to peer through the stuff and see what is your purpose, Father, in all of these things. To be spiritually minded. To understand that this is not intended to destroy. This is actually intended to preserve and restore. And to purge the evil. To purge the wicked thing from my midst. Now, I say that understanding that many people grew up in a church culture where the guy that was giving the message wasn't supposed to suggest whatsoever that there was any wicked thing in him. But I'm just like you. I'm a fellow sojourner. I'm a fellow traveler. And I stumble and I stub my toe and I fall and I make mistakes and I do the same things you do. And don't look at me like you don't know what I'm talking about. Told the crowd last night, I'll tell you, as I look around the room, I do not see any glorified bodies. So, as individuals, we need to learn that our Father's purpose is, when we go through these things, it's correction, because He wants us to purge the evil thing out from among us, because He doesn't want what happened to Adam to happen to you and me. And that is, he was no longer allowed to possess the land that the Lord had given to him. Plain and simple. He was no longer able to possess the land.